All right, folks, welcome to the Living Free podcast where we talk about building a life without limits. Today is Wednesday, September 10th, 2025. And I've got Ancap Tim on today to talk to us about his story. If you're in the live stream today and you have a question or a comment, put the word question or comments in all caps and we'll dive into that. Before I asked Tim the first question, which I did warn him what I was going to ask him before I jumped in, just to not be a total jerk, I do want to remind you that the Self-Reliance Festival is coming up October 4th and 5th in Camden, Tennessee. You can grab your tickets over at theselfreliancefestival.com. And we've got, for the first time, a youth program. I actually just talked to Alan Booker today about what he's doing with the youth. And he told me it kind of depends on who is in the class and how old they are. But anything from putting a blindfold on you and having you put your tent up blindfolded to see if you could do it in the dark, to cooking with fire and navigation. He's going to teach them how to use a compass, a bunch of stuff like that. It's going simultaneously while we have speakers such as Ken Berry, and we have Chuck Peoples coming up on the emergency medical. Brooke Whipple, who was on alone, not one time, but twice. She went back a second time, which is kind of cool. We've got the combat midwife and all sorts of other great speakers. Sonny Puzikas will be talking about homeschooling your boys. It's a very, very robust agenda. And then, of course, at our vendors, we have a bunch of demonstrations, including the churning butter challenge, which a friend of ours has an old-fashioned butter churn. And I know a lady who has raw milk. And we're going to put those things together and see how long it takes us to do it. And she said, you're going to get people to help me, right, Nicole? So you guys have to come out and help her churn that butter. And then at night, there's a singles meetup from the Unjected crew, as well as we're showing, I think, Red Dawn at 7:00, and then campfires and fun and hanging out. Your tent camping is included with it. That's all over at selfreliancefestival.com. With that, I need to bring Ancap Tim on, which the only reason I know Ancap Tim is because he reached out to me. So thanks for doing that, because that was kind of fun. Anyway, Ancap Tim, tell me about Ancap Tim before Ancap Tim knew how to Ancap Tim.
Okay. I guess I have a similar story to a lot of people that are more libertarian leaning, that they found their way to those principles. Pretty much raised in a evangelical Christian church. Um, I'm a Christian, knew Christ from my early age. Um, was a good little Republican for the most part. Baptist churches and the Republican Party seem to go hand in hand, especially in the late '90s when I was kind of coming up. And um, I at first really started thinking about um, freedom, and that maybe that the line we're being sold isn't adding up. It probably in '08. So up until that point, I was, just the good little Republican. I even joke. I wish this was a total joke, but I joke about having George W. Bush on my birthday cake, and when I was 18, I was
Did you
so excited.
literally have him on your birthday cake when you were 18?
Well, not the literal W, but yeah, actual picture. Yes, I did. Uh-huh. hmm Yeah, no, and the W didn't come to Virginia
So,
and sit
so
on the
paint
cake.
the picture for me. In high school, were you that conservative kid who knew everything about politics in my U.S. history class or my U.S. government class? Who's like, "You liberal chick, you're wrong." Or were you that guy?
Yeah, a little bit. I probably thought I knew more than I did. But there was a social studies teacher. He was a male teacher, and he was conservative like me too. And so he would set these panels up, and he'd always put me on because he knew I could handle myself pretty well and debate pretty well. So yeah, he'd set me up against the liberals of the class, and I could do a little bit of liberal head bashing, which is always fun, even now. But yeah, I was kind of that kid.
Did you make people cry?
I don't think I made anybody cry.
Did they make you cry?
No.
So let me paint this picture for you. I was the liberal person in your class you were fighting with, just so
Nice,
you know, because I could hold
nice.
my own, and I was 100% all in
Yeah.
liberal
And,
Democrat.
there's so many people that have come to liberty from so many different walks. That's what I love about it. It's not all just a bunch of jaded Republicans. It's people from the left too. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And then you were telling me before we got on, because we're going to end up, guys, he has something he does that's very cool that we're totally going to highlight during this show that I relate to really well. And it's something that a lot of us in the freedom movement forget to prioritize in our lives, I would say. And that's connecting your logical brain that has figured out how to be a libertarian with your artistic brain. But I'm not going to tell y'all what it is yet, just to build up a little mystery about this. But you were also mentioning that you grew up a preacher's son. Was that hard?
Mhm. Uh, I don't think it was as hard as some people maybe try to make it out to be. At least not for me. Um, I can't really look back on anything that it was any kind of struggle being a preacher's kid. You'd get the jokes every once in a while about, oh, those PKs, man, they're pretty bad behaved kids, and and I kind of was, so it didn't bother me because it was the truth. But yeah, no, I never really had any issues with it. Um, my dad, once he went in more full time ministry, he would work a job and then do ministry as a full pastor, which is kind of a full time job. But then when he got the opportunity to go full time, actually had more than being around and stuff. So yeah, I think I had a good childhood, good life. Can't
Yeah.
complain there.
And then you turned 18.
Yeah.
And at some point, there was a moment, there was something that happened to you that made you stop, just sort of, because it sounds like you were going along to get along with sort of that right Christian, conservative, Republican, if I vote this way, it'll all be fine
hmm
perspective. Were you politically involved, or were you building a career in another um, area at that point?
Um, I've always been involved in music. Um, I'm a studio engineer by trade, and so right out of high school, I started interning at some studios, and so I was doing that. But politics was always. It's funny. It was probably more important to me while I was in high school. And out of high school, it was kind of like, I've got other things going on. It kind of
Yeah.
lost a little bit of interest, but I still kept up with it. And I remember one time after I was married, and I was early 20s. Um, I Me and my wife went and campaigned. I can't even remember his name now. He was the guy that was the judge on Law and Order, but he ran for the nomination of the GOP. I can't think of his name. I can't. We campaigned. We went down to South Carolina from Virginia,
Hmm.
Spartanburg area, and sat on phones. They had like a call center set up. And we were calling people, cold calling people, because the primary was coming to South Carolina. So I would do stuff like that from time to time, but it was kind of sparse. Uh, but in '08, I guess that was the same time I was campaigning for him. I can't even think of his name.
Yeah, I can't
Um,
either. And I should know because I was actually paying attention that year.
yeah, and like so many people, Ron Paul, it just really woke me up. Seeing him at the debates, that was my moment of, like so many, of like, wow, like especially when they were talking about war and blowback, and there's consequences to all of these interventionist wars. It comes back, Americans chickens, they come back, and it was like I didn't agree with it wholeheartedly at the time, and it kind of in some ways made me mad. But then when like Rudy and different ones would press him, you need to apologize, and the crowd's booing at him and everything, and the man just doubles down. It's like there's something different about this guy because he doesn't care about what the audience thinks. He's not the typical politician that wants to kiss babies and make everybody happy. He actually stands for something. Um, and so that was a big turning point for me is seeing Ron Paul just double down on what he considered was truth and what I've come to learn is pretty sound truth since then. And so that kind of opened my eyes,
So
got me
was
on
it
the
the
journey.
words he was saying, or was any of it also how he was being treated? Because that election, they really like boogered him.
Yeah, more so in 12 when he was gaining
Yeah.
steam and he's actually beating Romney. Yes. See, by 12, I was fully in. I had my
Yeah.
Ron Paul T-shirt and all that, and we'd go to the rallies and different things, and but yeah, both. More so, what he was saying, it was like a truth bomb. It offended me because, how dare you say that about this great country, America, that we have, that we would actually do things wrong, and we're exceptional. I still had a little bit of that, even though I was coming out of it, but that it was like throwing water on somebody who was just out of it, and that was like it's just a wake up call. And so his words mainly, but then yeah, you start to see, once you start to follow the man a little more and listen to what he's saying, then you start to see how the actual party is treating him, which was trash in '08, and especially in 12, where they just basically screwed him out of any wins.
Yeah. Okay, so what you were like, this Ron Paul guy's cool,
Hmm.
and you started going all in on freedom. How did that impact where your focus was at that point in your real life, like in your home life, in your work life?
Yeah, my home life didn't really affect that. My wife's never been that involved in politics. She kind of just goes along because I go along with it. Not to say that she don't think for herself. She clearly does, and we still disagree about certain things now. Um, but yeah, it's like Ron Paul got a hold of both of us in a way, and these principles of liberty and individual. Looking at, I think the right and the left, even though the right says they're so anti-communist, but the right and the left are so collective in both of their thinking. Like it's all about culture and which is a collective. You're talking about a whole culture, and then the left, it's poor people or whatever. It's always these collectives that the left and right have. And when you start looking at things from an individual perspective, it really opens your eyes. And so it really didn't really affect our marriage any way. I was a music minister at a church, my dad's church, at the time, and it affected there because I wouldn't necessarily say things from the stage, and I'm trying to lead worship. I'm not getting into politics, but just conversations after service or different things, or I got in a lot of trouble for stuff I posted on Facebook. Um, and then it wasn't even all that extreme at that time. It just wasn't status quo and wasn't the line that the GOP was trying to share, and push. And yeah, so that really opened my eyes to, man, like whatever you want to call it, statism has really just got its tentacles into our churches, and it seems like our churches are focused more around the state Caesar than they are Christ, and which is a shame. I wish the church would come out from that. And a good friend of mine, he has a podcast. It's called The Bad Roman, and not trying to push that, but
Oh,
he
go
says
ahead.
he says the line that sometimes being a good Christian means you have to be a bad Roman, and I think it's so profound. Is our allegiance to Christ, or is it to Caesar?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that I noticed more of a pushback in the Christian community than probably family or any kind of home life. Yeah,
And it was based on things you were saying on social media more than anything else, or conversations you had?
yeah, yeah. And I'm not saying I'm perfect on all the things that I said. Um, yeah, I could, especially in those times, I could be a little much. I was kind of a shock jock, trying to do for people what Ron Paul did for me. Probably didn't work too well. Sometimes I think getting in debates and stuff on Facebook has been more negative than it's been positive. If you sit down with somebody and you actually, have a cup of coffee with them, you're much likely to see eye to eye on things. And then what you disagree on, hey, yeah, yeah, oh well, we disagree. Facebook and Twitter and all those things, man. I don't know. It just, I think it brings out the worst in us. Or I'll just speak for me, and especially during those times. So I won't say I was perfect in those times either. Um, but as far as my attitude behind some of the things that I was saying, so I've definitely had to learn and grow. But yeah, Hopefully that answered.
Well, I think when people discover libertarianism for the first time and it resonates with them, it's usually speaking to them from a logical standpoint, but
Hmm.
they emotionally buy in. And then it's like when you have a talent for something, like Tactical has a talent for looking at something and he can visually see things I can't see. So he can
Hmm.
look at the side of a hill and have a pretty good understanding of where the water will flow. He will look at a hill, and we have sheep on steep hills. Know exactly how the four-wheeler needs to go to be safest and not like roll.
Yeah.
And then when he has to tell me where to drive the four-wheeler, he's like, "Why can't you see that? That's frustrating." I think that's really similar to libertarianism. Like once you cop to it, you're like, "Wow, this is a really simple framework and it makes sense and it's fair and it lets people make the mistakes they're going to make and is
Hmm.
what it is, not my job, and it lets me not make mistakes or, however that is." And the whole world would be way better if only. And then you go out and you're like, why can't you see it? Boom, boom, boom. It's like you're slamming people over the head. That is almost every libertarian I know went through a phase where it's like the going for the jugular phase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it happens in Christianity too. You're introduced to Christ and you're excited about it, and you can get out there and start talking to people and come across as a little bit of a jerk. Like even it's just an excitement of what Christ has done for you. But if you're not careful, you can be a turnoff. And so yeah, I definitely have seen myself doing that in Christianity early on and in libertarianism as well.
So my friend Jack Spirko always says, not every libertarian's an anarchist, but every anarchist is a libertarian. So
Yeah.
how long did it take you to go from libertarian to anarchism?
What they say, the normal is about 2 to 3 years. So
6
12.
months if you didn't come across other libertarians first,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they're
that's
fighting with you the
true.
whole time.
Oh yeah, gosh, we are our own worst enemy, and I've said that many times that if the message is great, it's the messengers that we need to work on. Just being so at each other's throats. But anyway, so when did I make the plunge? Um, so 12, I was Mr. Ron Paul. Then the next election, I got to meet Gary Johnson. So I was kind of excited about the Libertarian Party. I never really heard of it pre 12, and after that, I was like, oh, so there is another option. And so I worked with them a while and did some campaigning and stuff like that for Gary, and then you kind of just like I'm doing the same old thing that I was tired of doing with the GOP. Now I'm just doing it with the Libertarian Party, and not to knock the Libertarian Party. I think they do good things. Um, they're kind of a bridge to get me to anarchy, and so not to knock them, but to me it was just okay. This is kind of the same old thing. We're trying to work within a system that is rigged and is so corrupt. Maybe you could make the argument locally, you might get some headway, um, but I just kind of developed a little more of the agorist idea of let's pull back from the state and just do freedom amongst people that like freedom, and trade and black markets, that type thing. Uh, Local farms, and so that got me into more of the homesteading. I kind of wanted to get into that because I wanted to be. I don't think anybody can be self-sufficient uh, um, without a community, without some people around, because everybody can't do everything. If that makes sense, I can't raise. Maybe I could, but I think it's hard to raise everything that you would need. I think you need a little bit of trade going on. You need a market, so to speak. And so, that really, those ideas kind of got me into more anarchy thinking. I call myself an Ancap. I think Ancap works well within agorism, because um, anarcho-capitalism means anarchy in the market. I mean, you don't get more agorism than that. Black markets. I actually, have a song that says black markets are better. So yeah, that's kind of was my journey to anarchy, and it was probably from 16, 17, 18. Definitely by 18, so maybe 2 years, and kind of been on that track ever since.
Okay, so it took you about 2 years to go the full
Hmm.
length, and it took me 14 to really commit. I was an
Yeah.
anarchist for many years before I committed.
Yeah.
And by committed, I mean I stopped putting 100% of my effort or 150% of my effort into working on libertarian public policy and politics, which I started in '04. And it was that same thing, that rigged system, the we're making headway here, but not there. So you did way better than me. I spent 14 years thinking, but maybe if I keep trying to, you know, fix the public pension system or um, put decision making back into the hands of the parents for how their children are educated, or just allow markets to run our healthcare instead of the way we're doing it now, because, yeah, I finally was like, I need to stop putting my effort into that, because while it may be making headway one place, we're losing the battle. The system is rigged, and I could do so much more good by helping people just realize freedom is easy, or it's
Mm.
simple, but it's not easy. Meaning you build the freedom into your life, and it's up to you to do it. And even a man in a 6 foot by 6 foot cell can be free in his mind
Hmm.
with what the tools that you have. So, so good on you. That was that's good. Um, okay, so you went into, so you talk about, because I have your notes in front of me. They don't have your notes. You talk about black markets and anarcho-capitalism and all of those things. Tell us more about what you see as how free people can help each other as a community be more free.
Yeah, I think social media has helped with that because it connects us in ways that we weren't connected before. Um, so it puts you in contact with like-minded people. Um, just me personally, I engage in the black market quite often. Just buying locally through Farmers Direct. Like I just bought a ton of corn in 65-gallon drums, and I didn't pay tax on it. I paid the guy cash. People say, well, the regulations still touch that because he might have got some kind of corn subsidy or blah blah blah. Yeah, okay, maybe, but it's still better than going to a feed store and actually paying tax. So I mean, it's little things that you can do, like you just mentioned, to unplug yourself from the system. I think homesteading is great. Get some chickens. I mean, that is the gateway drug to all this nonsense. And just see how much you give the chicken so little and how much they give you. I mean, an egg is an amazing thing. It's so nutritious. Um, uh, and it's very little effort. And then people usually go from that to goats. That we went to goats, and then it got into sheep and pigs and different things. And um, I think these are great tools to help people be introduced to anarchy, because the small farmer is not relying on any kind of farm subsidies. The small farmer doesn't have any kind of insurance that if all of their flock dies, what are they going to get from or their livestock die? They're not going to get any handouts from the federal government. So to me, that is a great example of anarchy in motion. Even you talk to older people that lived in times in like real small areas, they'll mention hog killing time, in the fall, and they had all these things that they would do. They would can, and they would have been all right if, I mean, something could have bad happened. Like you hear some of them talk about the Great Depression, and some of them didn't even know that the stock market even fell. It didn't affect them in any way. Um, I think these are kind of cool things that we can get back to. I don't think you have to necessarily totally unplug from the world to get into that a little bit. And so yeah, that would be my um, argument for people that are looking to like, where is anarchy? Well, it's all around you. You just have to look for it, and you have to make a conscious effort to engage yourself in it. A hard thing to do if you have kids is take them out of the public school system. It's not always easy for everybody's schedule, but I think that's why the government intentionally does that. You know, it's like it's free daycare. Um, so, like you said, it's not always easy, but it's all around us, and the decision's there for us to unplug ourselves a little bit at a time and to become more and more free. And like you said, it's a mindset.
It's totally a mindset. And the funny thing about it is that people are engaging in gray and black markets all the time. Like they go to the
Yeah.
farmer's market, they buy a tomato. Technically, I think in Tennessee, you don't have to pay tax on that at the farmer's market for what because it's direct from the farm. But if I set up a farm stand with a cash register, all of a
Yeah.
sudden now that you need to pay grocery tax on, right?
Right.
And those sorts, there's some gray areas there that just exist, and it's sort of like finding those gray areas or creative ways around it, I think is really one of the powers of the people, the homesteaders and people who are looking to operate outside the system, but also finding alternative ways to transact with each other is nice. But you do find at the core of every community there tends to be trade.
Hmm.
And the reason there's trade is you have your God-given talents and I have mine, and they may complement each other. And
Yeah.
you may be really good at something I'm really not good at or I hate doing, and you love doing it. And there is no reason that I shouldn't mail you delicious, fresh roasted coffee to your door in
Hmm.
exchange for one of your CDs or however, whatever the thing is. So
Yeah.
and that's why money exists. That's why we always go back to what's the economy like. And when you start looking at cultures and how they're organized, trade's always in there. Even if
Hmm.
it's a gifting society, trade is still in there. It's just a gifting society. The implied trade is that you're not tracking it. You just give people something if you have it and they need it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trade is the foundation of society, and that's why I say you can't be but so self-sufficient. It takes a little bit of a community, I think, because everybody can't be good at everything. Um, I'm not good at growing stuff. I can raise livestock. I'm not good at. So yeah, I buy my corn in different things. I have a hay field. I do hay, but it's don't take much of a green thumb, I don't think, to cut hay. But
I've looked at a lot of different homesteads and how they make money, and there is the people who are focused on meat just do meat.
Mhm.
And the people who are focused on market garden have a tendency to primarily do market garden, and they may have a couple of animals. Most people aren't doing it all well.
Right, no, I think it, it's hard. I mean,
Unless
it takes
if
a
you have
lot
a
of
big
talent.
family, then you can have specialists in the family. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, well, what got you into homesteading to begin with?
Chickens. It was one of those things where me and my wife comes from the mountains of North Carolina, Asheville area, and so we're all pretty got some redneck in us all. She's got more mountain woman in her, I like to joke and say. So we've always liked stuff like that. My wife always has loved animals, and so yeah, we just got some chickens one day and built a coop. I've always been pretty handy. I actually run a handyman business. I do studio work, and then I run a handyman business, and also help with homeschooling our kids. So I'm kind of wearing a bunch of different hats. So, but I've always been able to build stuff, and so build a coop and it just kind of went from there. And like I said, then it went from chickens to goats, from goats to pigs actually first, and then uh, we got into sheep and mainly for meat. And that's been the most. It's been the most sense for me. We have a nice hay field. Um, oh, since when we started with the chickens, we ended up moving out to the country. We got out of the city. Um, So that was a big step, but I'm so glad we did. And so now we've got some acreage where we can do hay. We got pasture land. We got a pond. So we've got a lot of these things set up. And so the sheep is just easier for me with this setup. It don't really cost me anything. They eat the pastures during the spring, summer, into the fall. Then they've got hay that I cut off our fields. And other than maybe if I wanted to grain feed a lamb to finish, I'm not having to really buy anything. I can just finish them with straight grass, which some people prefer. And so it works for me. It's not a lot of cost. That's one thing you got to look at when you get into doing homesteading is start slow and then ease yourself into it, because if you try to just bam do it all at once, you can get underwater quick. I mean, you can spend a lot of money on stuff and not have anything to show for it. So always start slow. That's why I say chickens is a good thing to start with, and that's what got us going.
Is that an ask me how I know example?
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
me, tell me your homestead story of woe. We all have one.
Well, raising pigs is not for me. If I had, before you think about raising pig, now, all right, let me back up. If you just want to get a feeder pig, which is it's just a pig that's been weaned, and you want to, usually they're cut if they're male, not, I mean, you don't have to worry about it if they're female, and you just fatten him up and take him to the butcher. That's not bad. Not that bad at all. We did that for a couple of years. Then we got to thinking, hey, why don't we start raising these things? Because I know what I have to pay to buy a feeder pig, and they usually have pretty good litters. Um, be prepared before you get into pigs, because they will tear up everything, especially when you have a big boar. They just get big and big and big and big, and you just always feeding that sucker. And they're like a bulldozer. They'll just put, well, I know different breeds are different, but the one we had, he would just put his snout in the ground and just plow up fields. And um, yeah, didn't work for me. And then we had two females, sows. One never got pregnant. I don't know if she was like a hermaphrodite or something. She ended up being sausage, but I mean, she was been exposed to so many boars, never get pregnant. The other one got pregnant, and it got cold one night, and she kind of got in the bottom of the pile, and the other two piled on her, and everything went wrong when she was kind of in the late stages. Well, not late, but far enough along where it was bad, and I went down there, and it looked like a war zone. And I'm not good. That's one thing I'm not good with, is like blood and guts and stuff like that. Like, I'm not a good butcher, so I take him to somebody there's some Mennonites around that do my butchering for me. Again, community. But I went down there and I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. And she was a pig. That sow was a pig that we raised from a litter, and she would sit for us. We'd go in there and tell her to sit. She'd sit down for us, and
Mm-hmm.
just a smart pig. And having to put her down was so tough. But there was nothing to do. Her insides were out of her, without being too graphic, and the other ones had already started to eat on her, and
Yep.
just a bad situation. And so, yeah, that's my fail. Pigs. Get a feeder pig. It's a whole lot easier than trying to raise them. Now, I have learned some things that if I was going to do it again, it takes some money up front. But if you could put a nice concrete slab down and then build your fences around that, where they couldn't get their nose underneath it to start ripping it up. Uh, that's a pretty good pig setup, and I've seen people on with homesteads and things online, and they do that. They have a pretty decent, maybe like a basketball size, um, or maybe half court. Just depends on how many you're raising, and that would be what I would look into. But again, that takes some money to get started on, instead of just a couple pig panels and for a feeder pig. So if you want to get started in pigs, you want your own bacon and pork and whatnot, just buy a feeder because it's tough raising pigs.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it really clicked how to raise them on pasture when I
Mm,
went to Polyface Farm, and I got
yeah.
to. It wasn't on the tour. A friend of mine was friends with Joel Salatin, and she took me up to this other area where the pigs were being rotated. They show you the pigs on the tour too. And because I wasn't on the tour, I had time to really observe how the fence was. And I was like, oh, that all makes sense. And they have paddocks set up all up in their woods.
Mm-hmm.
So they're
Yeah.
rotating them, I think every day, every 2 days, something like that. I think it's every day though, from place to place to place. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's a little less often than that. And they also feed them, and they wait for the feeder to run out, and then they move the feeder and fill the feeder, and then the pigs, of course, move.
Yeah.
But also, while I was there, the pigs got out.
Uh-huh.
And there were some farmhands who were in charge of the pigs going, oh no. And they were chasing the pigs, but they were like, hey, we're just chasing the pigs back in. And so that
even
told me
somebody who seems
something
like he had
also about, it's like even the gold standard farm, occasionally the
yeah,
pigs get out.
there you go. Yes.
Yeah. So pigs, it really depends on the breed too. Like there are some smaller ones that don't rip up the ground as much, but they take longer to grow out, which means you're paying more per pound in feed. You're right. Our boar was going through $200 worth of feed a month when we had a Duroc here.
Mm-hmm.
And he was giant. He was the sweetest thing, but he was giant. And that's why we stopped doing pigs, because I rotated them one time here after going to Polyface. I'm like, we can do this. And I was like, oh no. No. I need many more acres than I have. One day they had like the first paddock completely like dirt clod ripped up. Yeah. And that was
now the woods.
big.
The woods is a good idea.
Yeah.
I just don't have a lot of. I don't have a lot of some wooded area, but it's mainly around some of the paddocks, and I just don't have. I don't have the space. But
Well,
I've seen them raised in
go ahead.
woods and do a good job.
Yeah, well, and the way they have their paddocks is it's actually wire. It's not braided wire or whatever. And then they have gates set up as pallets that are very like permanent. And it looks visually different than the wire. So the pigs kind of get shocked a few times and figure out where it is. And then they can open that and the pigs see, oh, that looks different. And I didn't get shocked there. I was, in fact, scratching myself against it. And then they'll go through. Wherein if you move wire, if you move like woven or was it braided wire, the pig's hesitant to go over where it knows the wire used to be because it can't see very well. So there was a lot of like, we may do pigs again here. I also had a friend do a Korean natural gardening method where you just make a small pen like the size of, I'm in a 12-foot by 12-foot room right now.
Mm-hmm.
And they have biochar, logs, wood chips, sawdust, and then they get IMO and inoculate it with the indigenous microorganisms that they've collected. So it's like starting to decompose. And that's where the pig is, and it doesn't smell. Like the organisms eat the poop, and the pigs are happy, and you throw the food in there, and they root around and stir it all up. And so there's some other ways to raise them that I didn't realize, but also you need to have the right breed for the application, I think, of what you're doing.
Yeah, breed is important.
Yeah. Size is important too, because
and that's what what a great example of ingenuity and freedom that comes when like somebody figured out that how to do that 12 by 12 pen with all the with that setup where it decomposes. He didn't get that from some university, it's School of Hard Knocks, and that's what I love about hearing other homesteaders and the things that they've learned. And like you can learn so much just from personal experience and other people's personal experience. And that kind of goes right along with the anarchy community and freedom. We don't need all these rules and regulations. And what's wrong with School of Hard Knocks? You learn more anyway. You retain it.
Yeah, well, I think also with the advent of AI in our lives, a lot of the informational videos I think that we're starting to see, like right now, we can usually tell.
Yeah.
We're getting to the point where you can't tell. And so getting out and getting in person and talking to actual homesteaders about their actual pigs and what they've learned, A, you can ask questions and get better answers, but B, you're like, okay, this person genuinely raises pigs. And this is what they've done, and this is what they've learned. It may not be the way you end up raising pigs or sheep or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah.
So what drove you to sheep?
Um, sheep. We had the goats, and a lot of people raise goats, and but to me, it was like, other than if you're just going to sell them, um, there wasn't a big market as far as meat goats, unless, well, the kind of goats that we had, there was no market for meat goats. They were the smaller goats, the pygmy and stuff like that. So I was like, what is the? Because I always look at homesteading more of a, I'm doing this for a purpose. I don't want just a bunch of pets. I got enough dogs and cats and stuff. I want to at least pay for uh, my supplies and pack my own freezer. I at least want to break even. So started looking at sheep, and then hair sheep. They're different from, they're different from wool sheep. So there's a little less work. They seem to be a little less prone to parasites than some of the wool, from what I've learned, and I'm not the expert on that, so I could be totally wrong. But mine have been really, really parasite resistant. Um, I rarely worm. I'll do the FOMACHA thing and check every once in a while, and there's never really any issue. So I've kind of gotten a good gene pool going, and yeah, so we just got a couple ewes to start with, and uh, raised them to about a year old, and then introduced a ram, and just kind of went from there. And our flock's just steadily grown. I'll sell a lot of the females just when they get weaned, and then I'll usually keep the males. They seem to sell better, the intact males, um, and raise them up to around 100 pounds. Grain finish some, and grass finish some, and it's worked for us, and it keeps our freezer stocked with lamb, and also we sell the majority, and then it kind of pays for everything, and puts a little money in the pocket. Definitely not raising sheep full time by any means, but uh, I just, when I started looking at sheep, they just seemed like they made the most sense for me, because you got the meat aspect that you can sell, uh, and they don't require a whole lot. They don't need a ton of fencing. They're not as mischievous as goats. Goats are always going to look for a way to stick their head in something, and then they're screaming bloody murder down there, and you got to go down there and get their head straight. And so yeah, that's why I've gravitated to sheep. They kind of get a bad rap in the Christian community. Everybody talks about how dumb they are, and I guess in some ways they are. If one starts running, they're all going to run. So I get that aspect, and I get why we call voters sheep. But I don't think they're that dumb. They've been a good livestock for me to raise.
Yeah. What kind of sheep are you raising?
Katahdin. I
Okay.
think that's how you say it.
Yeah. That's how most people say it that I know.
Yeah.
I have St. Croix, but we have two that have a little bit of Katahdin in them, and they're very closely related to each other.
I've heard good things about those. Yeah.
Yeah.
St. Croix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but yeah, for the parasite load, I've only had the worm one time, and that was when the flock first got here, and it was one animal.
Yeah.
And he also was the one that needed antibiotics, and he also became food for my house, because then I wouldn't sell anything that had antibiotics in it ever to anybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Good.
I was content to wait 60 days and just eat him, but yeah. But it's interesting. So I too went from chickens to ducks, and then goats, and then they got on my roof a lot, and they got out a lot, and they did a lot of good work as far as clearing the property here. But I resisted sheep for over a decade on my homestead. And finally, Nick Ferguson talked me into it, and I'm like, fine, I'll get sheep. And they eat almost as much as goats. And I was like, why didn't I do this? Like, year 3 would have been good. Year 3 would have been good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you copped to that one a little sooner than I did, after having a fleet of cute goats.
Yeah. I mean, goats, if you want a pet, you want something that's just fun. A goat's just like a dog. I mean, especially if you get like a boar. Is it boar? Is that the breed?
Yeah, boer, or I don't know how you say it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they were cool. I mean, I'd go down there, and if I sat somewhere, he'd get his head right up underneath there, and he just wanted to be scratched. Just like a dog. They're great. But as far as if you're trying to at least make it worth your while for meat and make a little bit of money, it wasn't for me. I know people that raise them and they do good. It just sheep's always made sense, a little more sense for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I like that you're designing your homestead with profit in mind too, because the biggest mistake I see people, they're like, I'll save money, I'll start a homestead. It's like, oh no, 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 no. No, no, no. You have to do more than say those words. You have to actually start tracking what you're doing and look at its impact on your budget, because it's very easy to have to work a full-time job to pay for the house. And then the other partner is running the homestead and they need money from the full-time job for the homestead.
Yeah,
And then they need to get a part-time job, and pretty much all you do is work all the time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But if you
Start
start
slow.
really analyzing, I think it makes sense. So it sounds like you've done that.
Yeah, like I said, you got to do what works for you. I would like to add in the next, well, actually this fall, I'm looking to start growing garlic. Um, I'm a big garlic and honey guy. Like anytime somebody's got some sniffles, I'm like, get the garlic and honey. So I'm like, why don't I raise my own? So I'm looking to do garlic this fall, and I'd like to get some bees this next spring in 26. I know it takes maybe a year or two to actually get honey, um, but I figure two hives would be good to get into. It wouldn't be but so much work, um, and then we'd have local honey because the hayfield got a lot of clover in it, and so yeah, I'm thinking about adding a couple things to it. Right now, it's just chickens, ducks. I got ducks just because I got the pond, and I've always liked ducks. I don't really do anything with them.
They waddle.
Um, yeah, they're great. Um, the dog, they'll lay eggs around the pond, and I used to get after my dog for eating them, but I'm like it's a little extra protein for him, And so if they lay where they're supposed to, I'll get them up and we'll use them. But mainly we just use the chicken eggs, and um, got a few geese. Just they're basically pets, and got a pond. Why not have
You
some
married
geese
the
in the pond?
animal lover.
I did. Yeah, exactly. These were not my ideas. uh,
I see
well,
what's
the
going
ducks
on
maybe.
here.
Yeah, the geese were definitely my wife.
I have 2 pet goats for the same reason, and I'm the animal lover. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, goats are great.
Yeah, but
They can be very fun. So yeah, those things, the sheep, the poultry, just for eggs, and like going forward, I might raise a feeder every year. Just raise one for our family. I won't sell pork anymore. Um, it's enough going on with just the sheep for me. Just doing the meat there.
how much of your time do your sheep take every week? Would you estimate?
I will. I mean, I see them every day because I'll go down and feed our livestock guardian dog. Um, but there'll be maybe a couple days that I don't even mess with them. I have different paddocks set up,
Yeah.
and they all have access. All of the paddocks I have set up have access to a pond, pretty decent sized pond, and so they get water from that. I don't have to water them. Um, I'm lazy, so I kind of thought this through. I wanted it where I didn't have to do a lot, but I'll move them every 4 or 5 days or something like it. Sometimes a week, and like the paddock around the pond is like my what do they call it? Like your throwaway paddock. I'm not too concerned with keeping good grass there. Um, so yeah, no, they don't take up too much time. When I'm finishing a lamb ram with grain, that takes the most work. But I've got a decent feeder that I just have to feed it, fill up every few days, and I have an automatic waterer that pumps straight out the pond into it, and solar. So I like a lot of solar stuff. Kind of had to make myself learn how all that worked, just because getting power down there wasn't the easiest thing. So yeah, mainly just being lazy is why I've set up a lot of things that I have.
I don't call that being lazy. That's being frugal with your time.
Yeah,
And
there you
it's
go. I
really
like that better.
important because, like, you're you right now, but Ancap Tim in 20 years is not going to probably run as fast or jump as high. And so if you have your paddock set up in a way that's easy now,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll probably still maintain that then. But
That's good.
yeah. Yeah, if it's a fight every time, which we're still at the fight phase, I'm pretty sure, on our paddocks. Uh, Eventually you're going to be like, okay, I've gotten to the age where sheep are no longer my thing, and they can be something that is easy. I am not the example of sheep being easy though.
Yeah, and it may be, I don't have, but so many. I've never really had over 10 ewes, so it's a smaller flock. But just me, my wife will help. She's a RN, so she'll help with some of the if they have an issue with birthing and things. But a lot of them drop twins, and so you can have a lot of lambs on your hand with 10 sheep or six, whatever. And so that's plenty for me. But it might not be the biggest herd. Um, but if you're selling anywhere from 5 to 10 lamb rams, you can do pretty decent, um, and at least definitely cover all your costs for any lamb that you put back, and make a little money, little side hustle.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured out I needed a flock of like 300 for it to be my full-time job when I
Wow,
started selling that. Maybe
you
not
you
300
have that
ewes.
many?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I make my money selling coffee. I'm a coffee
Yes,
grower.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah. Well, because it was just like, and how much land would I need for that? And then if land like this land, that's not going to be fun at all. So I kind of went through that exercise, and I feel like I could also get it down to 150 and still do well if I did it right. But
Yeah,
um, I kind of had to go through that to think about it. And I was like, okay, but then how do we make this work at this size? So we're at about 20 right now,
yeah.
24. Um, and that includes 10 that are
I,
going to the butcher in October.
I
So
got you. Yeah,
similar
but
size.
that'll keep you busy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a decent sized flock.
Yes, the hoof trimming. Do you do that?
Probably not as good as
Do you
I
put that
should.
up like I do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a
I'll put
better
it off.
two-person job.
Yes, it is, and that's one that I always tell my wife. You got to go down there with me. You got to help me do that. Pretty much everything else I can handle, but yeah, the hoof. We got one of those little things you can put your head in, and it
Yeah.
kind of chain around it. It holds them in, but it's sometimes you need another hand just to steady the animal.
Yeah. Yeah, and you
Yep.
got a sharp thing on their foot, so you kind of don't want
Hmm.
to you don't want to go wrong
Right.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I let the nurse do the the trimming. I figured that wouldn't be a good job for me. And when we had pigs, she was I would help hold the pig, but she would do all the cutting and stuff for the males. So it's
Oh,
good. It's good to have a nurse around
yeah, I was
on a
gonna say that's
homestead.
great. I never actually castrated my males. I kept bringing a veterinarian in to show me how. They get here and it'd be done before I walked from my house to the pasture.
Ah,
And I'd be like, well, okay. I
yeah.
want to do one pig one time, but pig
Yeah.
castration is scary because you got to
It's
cut in.
yeah, and you just grab it and rip. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not for the faint,
fate of
and
heart.
that's why it ain't good for me because I'm a baby when it comes to stuff like that. I don't deal with blood and guts very well.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're well matched to that to be on a homestead.
Yes, yes,
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about music. I sort of hinted at your creative art, and you did talk about music. So you started out um, pursuing a career in music to begin with.
yes,
Tell us how that went.
yeah. So early on, it was more studio work, and still I do a lot of that to this day. Mainly a lot of work that comes in is studio work. Um, so I started in the studio, and then it kind of went to, I would just do little demos or something, and somehow my dad heard, and it just kind of went from there, snowballed over the next couple of years, and I was in Bible college at the time, and so he was just like, why don't you just come to our church and be the music minister? So I had a kind of an in there with the pastor being my dad, and I did that for about 10 years. Then I once everything to me started waking up as far as libertarianism. I could see a little bit like with Facebook, and people would get so angry about my views, um, that I was just like, maybe it's time to go somewhere else. And so I had a good friend that we ended up starting a Christian band together, called Avery Road. I had a named after my daughter, my firstborn daughter. She only lived 7 weeks, and but even at her funeral, um, there were 7 people that accepted Christ as their Savior, and it was a verse in Philippians that Paul is writing. He's in prison. He's like, all this stuff happened for the furtherance of the gospel, and so that's on her tombstone, and and that was kind of the purpose behind Avery Road. We were just kind of taking her name as a banner, and I did that for about 3.5 years, right up till COVID, and that killed that. So I was an angry person during the COVID years, at least online, and took a couple years to just kind of get over the nonsense of that, and just felt so betrayed by so many people that you thought they had a better understanding of liberty and a better understanding of the state, and um, that they were deceptive, and they just kind of bought things hook, line, and sinker, and it was kind of depressing. It took a while to come out of that. I started writing during that process and writing more anti-state, libertarian stuff. I even have a song on the album that's called "No King But Christ." So I wrap it up, the album up with that song purposefully, because we can talk about that taxation is theft, the state's a mafia, good ideas don't require force, but ultimately the hope for humanity, I think, is Christ. And so I wanted to end the album with that. But that's when that journey started. After 2020, that was kind of my escape, my notepad on my phone, and just writing things, and sitting at the piano and banging out chord patterns and figuring out melodies, and it was a good therapy for me. Um, so that's kind of how the album came about. Then I went from that to sending out demos to people, and they were like, "You should do something with this." And as the studio guy in me is like, I can't just leave them with just a piano and a vocal. I need to, put a little production behind this, and so started the process of doing all that and redoing the vocals. And most of the album is me playing different instruments. I'm kind of like the little bit of a jack of all trade, master of none. I'm not great at anything, but I can, make 4 chords out of a lot of different instruments. And so, um, me playing the instruments, me doing all the vocals, probably a better singer than I am a musician. I hope. Uh, I'm not that good of a musician, but
Singers are musicians. Come on, man.
yeah, yeah.
I
Yes,
am
it's
my
true.
instrument.
I am my instrument. That's true. That's true. I'll stick to that. I'll stick to that. So yeah, it's no AI. Like when I first put the stuff out, I don't know if I should take it as a compliment, but there's some trolls that jump on there like, "That's AI trash," and I'm like, "Does it sound bad?" And they're like, "No, I mean it doesn't sound bad, but you can tell it's AI." And I'm like, "Well, it's not AI." It's so I don't know if I should take it as compliments or that just trolls being trolls. But yeah, I want to make it clear that it's actually me singing on the album, me playing the instruments, couple solo guitar parts. I had some friends come in and do those that could actually solo, uh, and a drummer as well. I'm not a drummer, so yeah, that's that's kind of how the album came to be, and it's out. It's been out for about a month now on all the streaming services. I'm on YouTube, all the socials, and all that stuff. So if you
We also have
listen,
this really cool resource.
yeah,
So,
ancaptim.com.
ancaptim.com. Com? Yeah. That's not what
Mm-hmm.
it says at the top of my screen because it redirects. But
Well, yeah,
yes,
that's a little trick. That's a little trick.
yeah,
But yeah,
that's a good
if
one.
you type in ancaptim.com, it'll take you there. Yeah.
So you can listen to his music, you can buy his CDs, you can watch his videos. Oops, I just hit the button. It's going to get loud real quick. Where'd you go? Now you guys can just, I guess it just, I'm sorry. it stopped. And so I love supporting other musicians. You actually hit up just the right person when you hit me up. You're like, hey, I got this album. My first thought, by the way, Tim, was like, man, I cannot fit music into Sulphur Alliance Festival right now and actually do you any justice, because I've seen what happens in the evening. But yeah, that's really cool. And you guys, you can listen before you buy. You can go watch the videos and then buy a CD, or listen on Amazon if you have an Amazon Music account, all of those things. So, what has this brought to your life since you released it?
I think some fulfillment, um, just being able to because I've never really written music before. In the Christian band, the writer was the other guy of the duo Avery Road. His name was Jason Burton, and he's a great songwriter. So I learned a lot from him, but I never did it myself. So there's a lot of fulfillment in crafting something from start to finish that is yours. Like if that's these are my babies. That probably fulfillment. Even if only 1,000 people listen to it. I mainly did it for me, but I hope people in the Liberty community will it'll speak to them as well, and be like a soundtrack to what they know in their head already. Um, that's kind of the hope. And but yeah, it's definitely been fulfilling process to just get these ideas on tape, as we say in the recording world.
On tape, if you're old,
Yeah,
like we are.
I've never recorded on actual tape, but yeah, it's just what
I
all
have
everybody says.
recorded on actual tape, four
Nice.
track.
Yeah.
That was like the big innovation. And now I'm like, I can use as many tracks as I want.
Yep.
Really? Like we had to do this whole mix it down and bounce back and forth thing.
Hmm.
Yep. You
Yep.
know, you know. Um, yeah. So when you write a song, do you write the words and then put music to it? Does the music come to you in the words? Like, how does that feel for you?
For most of my original songs, I do the lyrics first, just because it's something I can sit my phone and tap out, while I'm being lazy in a recliner, or whatever. Um, so that's the process for most of the song. I do have a few parodies. I have two on the album. One of a Billy Joel song, "We Didn't Start the Fires, We Didn't Start the Scheming." That, of course, you already had the music, already had the melody. I'm just messing the words up. And then another one, I've always been a big fan of memes. They've got me in a lot of trouble on social media, a lot of bands over the years. And so I have a song. It's a parody of "Girls, Girls, Girls" by Motley Crue. It's memes, 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 and it's simply for laughs. It's fun. It's dumb. I mean, that's not a song to take too serious. Um, but so yeah, mostly lyrics, unless I like messing with parodies. It's the Weird Al Yankovic in me. Um, I, I, I like taking other established songs, popular songs, and twisting the words around, and making them say something I want to say. But the majority of the album, 8 of the 11 songs, are original songs.
And then you write the words, do you then go to melody or do you go to chord structure?
A lot of times, maybe a mix of both. Sometimes I'll have a melody and I'll record it in my phone, just like a audio note. And sometimes I just maybe sit down and with the guitar or the piano and just get a chord progression. And one song I have is called "Good Ideas," and the chorus is "Good ideas don't require force." It's kind of got a Grateful Dead, kind of a little bit of a hippie-ish feel to it. Um, that one was, just getting those chords in the correct groove, and then because it's the same 4 chords, like say same 3 chords over and over again. It's a very jam band type song. So it just depends on the song. If it's more involved musically, and more chords that are involved, I most times start with a melody, and then I'll figure out the chords around the complicated melody. If it's just a fun song that you can like do with a looper, where you play the guitar and then you loop it and you can play the bass. like good ideas, and that was a song that I just uh, took the very familiar chord progression for any players out there, 1 7 flat 4, over and over.
Yeah. Cool. Well, guys, you gotta do you want to share anything with us before we sign off?
No, I pretty much covered everything. I think I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you actually answering messages. That means a lot because everybody doesn't do that. So I appreciate that. I've had fun, and I will say if people want CDs and vinyl, I know a lot of people in our community they like to own actual physical media. You can find those at that same website that you posted as well.
Yeah, check out his music at ancaptim.com. And if you want to order something, you can do it right there. He doesn't hate money. He has it set up so that you can order it on his website, which is well done. I laughed when you said, thank goodness you answer messages, because I've missed a lot of messages over the last 5 years, I will admit. So one of my resolutions this year for myself, or is something I want to get better at, is actually being somebody. I stopped telling myself I'm bad at keeping up with messages and started telling myself I'm getting better at answering messages. So apparently it's starting to finally work. So those of you who haven't answered, just send me another email. That's all I can say. Anyway, Tim, thanks so much for sharing your story with us. Guys, don't forget to get your tickets to selfreliancefestival.com and definitely check out ancaptim.com. That's ANCAPTIM.com. Give his music a listen. Sounds like he's got a good variety there. So check out different songs. And if you want to connect with him, there's even a contact button at the bottom of the page. If you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at hollowroast.com. 2, consider becoming a member. Go to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more. Make it a great week.